Hi everyone! In today's video we're gonna be doing HTTP in detail room. So we are going to answer some questions first. So what is HTTP or HTTPS? HTTP for Hypertext Transfer Protocol is what's used whenever you view a website. It was developed by Tim Berners-Lee and his team between 1989 and 1991. HTTP is a set of rules used for communicating with web servers for the transmitting of web page data, whether that is HTML, images, videos, and so on. While HTTPS is Hypertext Transfer Protocol Secure, is the secure version of HTTP, and HTTPS data is encrypted. So it not only stops people from seeing the data you're receiving and sending, but it also gives you the assurance that you're talking to the correct web server and not something impersonating it. And so for this, there's a question that is asked at the end saying on the mock web page. So it says, on the mock web page on the right there is an issue. Once you've found it, click on it, and what is the challenge flag? So what we can see here is it uses HTTP instead of HTTPS, and there is this lock with a red, I don't know how it's called in English. How do we call that? A red line. Yeah, just say red line crossing it. And so if we click on it, we get the flag. Let's continue. So in fact, when we want to access a website, the browser will need to make requests to a web server for assets such as HTML, images, and download the responses. But before that, we need what we call a URL. So URL, or Uniform Resource Locator. So it is, everyone used it before, even if you don't know the name, like its name. In fact, a URL is predominantly an instruction on how to access a resource on the internet. So for example, this here, the scheme, HTTP. It could be HTTP, HTTPS, FTP. So this instructs on what protocol to use for accessing the resource. Then we have the user and password. So some services require authentication to log in. You can put a username and password into the URL to log in. Maybe you never seen that before, but trust me, it does exist. Then the host, or the domain name, or an IP address of the server you wish to access. Then you get here 80, which is the port number. So the port number that you are going to connect to. If we are looking for HTTP, by default it's usually 80. So that's why when you type in a URL, you rarely or never type, or you never type the 80 port, and you rarely type a port number. And if it's HTTPS, you would be using by default the port 443. But this can be hosted on any port from between number 1 to number 65,535. That's why we can define the port number here. Then the path, or which is the file name or location of the resource you are trying to access. Here it's view room. The query string. here is what is in green. So it's extra bits of information that can be sent to the requested path. For example, here you would tell that you wish to view to receive the room which has the ID number 1. And then we have fragment. This is a reference to a location on the actual page requested. This is commonly used for pages with long content and can have a certain part of the page directly linked to it. So it's viewable to the user as soon as they access the page. So when you want to make a request, in fact, what is done is you use the request method. Here it's a get method. We're gonna see other HTTP method later. So here it's get method, then the page that is being requested. So here it's the home page, and the version of the HTTP protocol used is. So here it's HTTP 1.1. So if we are sending this request, what does that mean? That means that we are sending a get, like the get method, requesting for the home page, telling the server to use HTTP version 1.1. Host tryhackme.com tells the web server we want the website tryhackme.com. And then the next line will tell the web server that we are using the Firefox version 87 browser. The next line tells the web server that the web page that referred us to this one is tryhackme.com. As we know, or as you will learn now, HTTP requests always end with a blank line to inform the web server that the request has finished. And if we look at a response example, that's what it looks like. So breaking it down, we have the first line is to say that it's HTTP 1.1, the version of HTTP that is used, and the 200 OK is the HTTP status code, and in this case that means that the request has completed successfully. We're gonna see more HTTP status codes later. The second line tells the web server the software, like what is the web server's software and version number. Here it's Nginx 1.15.8 version. The third line gives the current time, date, and time zone of the web server. The next line is for the content type header, and it tells the client what sort of information is going to be sent. So here it's text, HTML, it could be images, videos, PDFs, and so on. The content length tells the client how long the response is, so that it knows if there is data missing or not. Then, like for the request, there was a blank line. For the response, there is also a blank line to confirm the end of the HTTP response. So, like for the HTTP request, there is a blank line to confirm the end of the HTTP response, and then the rest is the information that has been requested, and in this instance, it's the home page. So I told you that there are multiple HTTP methods, and we'll cover the most common ones. So although you'll mostly deal with get and post method, but we'll also see the put request, the put method, and the delete method. So the get method or get request is used for getting information from a web server. The post request is used for submitting data to the web server, potentially creating new records. The put request is used for submitting data to a web server to update information, while the delete request is used for deleting information or records from a web server. So after the HTTP methods, we'll look at HTTP status codes. An HTTP server will always respond in its first line with a status code, and that will inform the client of the outcome of the request and potentially how to handle it. So this status code can be broken down into 5 different ranges. The 100 to 199, which is information response, 200 to 299, which are here this range of status code is used for to tell the client that the request is successful. 300 to 399 for redirection. So these are used to redirect the client's request to another resource. This can be either to a different web page or a different website altogether. 400 to 499 is to inform the client that there was an error with the request, and 500 to 599 is reserved for errors happening on the server side, and it usually indicates quite a major problem with the server handling the request. So we're going to have a look at the common HTTP status code. 200 for OK, the request was completed successfully. 201 created means that a resource has been created. 301 to permanent redirect. So this redirects the client's browser to a new web page or tells search engines that the page has been moved somewhere else and to look there instead. 302 temporary redirect. So it's similar to the one just before, but as the name suggests, it's temporary instead of permanent. 400 bad request. This tells the browser that something was either wrong or missing in the request. This could sometimes be used if the web server resource that is being requested expected a certain parameter that the client didn't send. 401 not authorized. Means that you are currently allowed to view this resource. You are not currently allowed to view this resource until you have authorized with the web application, most commonly with a username and password. 403 forbidden. So this means that you do not have permission to view this resource whether you are logged in or not. 405 method not allowed. The resource does not allow this method request. For example, you send a GET request to the resource, create account when it was expecting a POST request instead. The 404 page not found. Here, the page or resource that you are requesting does not exist. And 500 internal service error. The server has encountered some kind of error with your request that it doesn't know how to handle properly. And the last one that we'll view here is the 503. So the 503 is service unavailable. This server cannot handle your request as it's either overloaded or down for maintenance. So in this part, it asks us to view the site. So this let us have a look at the different error what they look like. So the 403 forbidden looks like this. As you can see, there is even the web server here and the version of it. The 404 error says not found. The requested URL was not found on this server, and it gives more information to. And the 503 error says service unavailable. The service is temporarily unable to service your request due to maintenance downtime or capacity problems. Please try again later. And same, you can see that there are more information that you could use later on. We'll see why or how in future videos. So we also have headers in HTTP. Headers are additional bits of data you can send to the web server when making requests. And although there are no headers that are strictly required when making an HTTP request, you'll find difficult to view a website properly without them. So the common request headers that we find or we use are the host one. So some web servers host multiple websites, so by providing the host headers, you can tell to the website, you can tell to the web server which one you require. Otherwise, you'll just receive the default website for the server. Then there's the user agent. So if you remember earlier, we said the user agent was the browser version and so on. So this is your browser software and version number. It tells the web server your browser software helps format the website properly for your browser, and also some elements of HTML, JavaScript, and CSS are only available in certain browsers. Then we have the content length. So when sending data to a web server, such as in a form, the content length tells the web server how much data to expect in the web request. This way, the server can ensure it isn't missing any data. Accept encoding. It tells the web server what types of compression methods the browser supports so that the data can be made smaller for transmitting over the internet. And then cookies. So cookie, it's data sent to the server to help remember your information. And we'll see more of the cookies later in this video. And then we have common response headers. So these are the headers that are returned to the client from the server after a request. Like set cookie, it's the information to store which gets sent back to the web server on each request. So if the request, we send cookie in the request, in the response we can have a set cookie. So it says to our browser to store this information. Then cache control. It's how long to store the content of the response in the browser's cache before it requests it again. Content type tells the client what type of data is being returned, like HTML, text, JavaScript, images, PDF, videos, audio, etc. Using the content type header, the browser then knows how to process the data. And content encoding, so here it says what method has been used to compress the data to make it smaller when sending it over the internet. So one of the encoding that we see a lot would be base64. We are going to see it in future videos a lot, so yeah. And then cookies. So I'm sure you've heard of cookies before, even before this video. They are just a small piece of data that is stored on your computer, and the cookies are set when you receive a set cookie header from a web server. Then every further request you make, you'll send the cookie data back to the web server. So for example, here you're sending a request to request for the web page cookies.thm, and you don't have a cookie for now. Then you get the response. So the server responds back with a simple web page with a form asking for the username, generally. And then when you send back the answer, so here it's a post request, and you send back the answer with the name set to Adam, and you send it back to this web server. The web server will send back and will respond to this with a set cookie header telling the client to save the data name equal Adam. And then for the next and every further request, the client sends the cookie data back to the server. And then when the server answers, it will display, so the servers then sees the cookie data, and instead of displaying the form, it displays a welcome message instead. So why we use cookies? It's just because HTTP is stateless, which means it doesn't keep track of your previous requests. So cookies can be used to remind the web server who you are and some personal settings for the website, or whether you've been to the website before. Cookies can be used also for many purposes, but are most commonly used for website authentication. The cookie value won't usually be a clear text string where you can see the password, but a token, so a unique secret code that isn't easily humanly guessable. So if you want to see cookies, just go to your browser, and for example, I have Firefox. So I will just click on F12 and it opens this. So yeah, my browser is in French. So it opens this, and if you go to this part, you can see cookies, and depending on the website where you are, you can have access to your cookies, and you'll see the values here. So here, as I'm on a static website, there is no cookie in it. That's why. Anyway, so we will end up with making requests. So in this part, it asks us to open the website. So let's do that. So what we get here is an emulator for making demo HTTP requests, and it asks us to answer some questions. So first, make a GET request to room. So let's do that, and you can see here that it changes, like the after GET method, you get the path that we are requesting and HTTP1, so the version, and here's the response. So here you go. Then make a GET request to blog, and using the gear icon, set the ID parameter to 1 in the URL field. So instead of room, we have blog. Change the parameter. So the parameter is like ID, and the value should be 1. Here you go. So what we get here is get blog, and then the string query is ID equal 1. Same thing, then go, and here you go. Next question, make a delete request to user 1. So let's change this, user 1 we should remove the parameters. There you go. And that's it. We deleted the user. So next one is make a put request to user2 with the username parameter set to admin. So put user2 and changing the parameter. So here it says parameter username, value is admin. So here you go. And sending it. And that's it. We sent it. And then for the next and last one, post the username of Tryhackme and the password of let me in to log in. So post in login, and we change the parameters. So it says username THM, then password let me in. And as you can see, it changes. So we have post here, we are going to request for the login, and we have the host, user agent, content length, and here are the parameters that we just put. And let's send the request. And that's it. That was the last one. So thank you for watching today's video. I hope you enjoyed it, and let's meet on next time. Bye!